Welcome. Thank you for joining us. This is our joint meeting with the Circuit Court judges and staff. So thanks for joining us. Great to see everyone. And you can say hi also.
Thank you. Wells Ashby, presiding judge for Deschutes County. Thank you for having us this afternoon.
And then, introductions, just so we go around. Let's just do that whole introduction program.
Whitney Hale, Deputy County Administrator. Kim Riley, Senior Assistant Legal Counsel.
Nick Leland, County Administrator. I'm Eric Croft, Deputy County Administrator, and I also have an interim Fair and Expo Director. Got a rodeo coming this weekend.
No, it starts tomorrow. Tomorrow.
We have a rodeo starting tomorrow. Join us.
That's what you said.
Yes.
Randy Miller, Deschutes County Circuit Court Judge.
Patty Adair, Deschutes County Commissioner, and my niece is roping and maybe on the horse she bought for me. So look for a black, beautiful horse named Maximus.
Thanks.
Nice.
Or she might be riding Mojo, so who knows?
Tony DeBone, Deschutes County Commissioner.
Wells Ashby, presiding judge, and I am going to go back to Judge Miller, incoming presiding judge as of January of 2026.
Wonderful.
So,
But not yet.
Yeah.
right.
Not yet. Here we go.
Phil Chang, Deschutes County Commissioner.
Ty Rupert, Deschutes County Sheriff.
Lee Randall, Deschutes County Facilities Director.
Doyle County Council.
Captain.
Michael Schultz, Sheriff's Office, County.
Holly Harris, Health Services Director.
So Wild Trout Administrator.
So yeah, great. Thanks for the introductions. I mean, this is a group that we usually see each other, mostly know everybody's name, but it's good to say hi here like this. So at that time, we've got an item here, a courthouse expansion update. Lee, thank you very much. Thank you. Probably some photos.
Is that ready with wide or not? I'm kidding.
We'll have an opportunity if there's willingness to go walk through a little bit of what it looks like today too.
Oh, there's technology gonna work.
Well, then just another note. So it sounds like we have some judges doing judge work right now too. So everybody's here.
Almost there. All right, thank you for the opportunity to share today. I have a few slides. I'll provide a summary of the project, which most of you have heard before, that we'll talk about. We'll go through some floor plans, renderings, and then where we're at with construction, and we'll end with talking about the schedule. So as you're all aware, the goals of the project were to increase the courtroom count, expand and consolidate court administration in the new expansion, improve security screening. The in-custody holding and transport project as a whole is 3 levels plus the basement parking, and it's about 51,000 square feet. I'll walk through quickly, just for everyone's benefit, some of the floor plans. This is the basement level plan. You can see on the right the parking garage. There's also the sheriff's office area. On the left, there will be some remodel to the existing jury assembly area. We'll be adding 2 restrooms that will be specific for the jury assembly area. This is the first floor. In addition to the expansion for administration and public service counters in the existing building, we'll be adding a hearing room and also a few additional offices for court administration. Second floor is the courtroom level of the expansion. We'll also be adding additional attorney-client visitation rooms. We have about 5 additional ones throughout the courthouse. You can see the design there, which emphasizes multiple pathways for staff in custody and for the public, so that those folks are not crossing paths where they don't need to. Moving on to some renderings, here's the view from the west. You'll see the new street level main entry, which is cross-laminated timber construction. If you're on the tour today, you'll get to see some of that going up. We're nearly complete with that part of the wood structure. at the main entry. From the southwest, I have to think there for a second. Another rendering, you can see a little better view of the main entry. One of the big advantages of the new entry will be, we'll have queuing inside for folks waiting to go through security. So out of the weather, it's also at street level, so they're not going up stairs in the snow and ice, and that will all be inside. And then this is from Bond and Harriman, and that is the entrance for the sheriff's office and for the basement level parking garage. So something we hadn't shared previously, this is the proposed monument for the A.J. Tucker building at the corner of Greenwood and Harriman. It's incorporated into a planter wall there. And then a close-up of both the monument. And then on the right, we've actually already, I believe we have the plaque on site. We've already gotten that, and there's a plaque with a little history of the building and what was there before. This was part of what we worked through with the City of Bend for removal of the existing building. This is still designated on the local historic list as a historic site with the monument and the plaque.
And the building's still available, correct?
It is,
Facade,
so
facade.
we have the catalog stones available, and we are open to talking about who might want to have those on their site and recreate the facade. So this is a rendering of the main entry. You can see the cross-laminated timber. It's polished concrete floor, and then a more open, accessible, but yet secure court security desk there. The other important aspect you'll see today when we're on the tour is up and to the right is a new court security office. And so from that office, they'll have a view of this area. So whether you have officers or deputies in the office or deputies at the station, they have a full view of what's going on in the lobby. Rendering of the courtroom. Many of you were involved in the full-scale mock-up that we did at the fairgrounds. Gave us an opportunity in real time to lower certain heights of desks or walls, to move things in and out and make sure we're getting good sight lines for everyone that's involved. I'll just pause there quickly. Any questions to this point on the project and scope?
I'll just acknowledge that in this room a couple of years ago, so you pulled out a poster board from the vision from 25 years ago or whatever it was, like when we need to build out, this will be what it looks like. And it's starting to turn out just like what we thought from years ago. As I say, before our time, before probably all of our time. But it's just interesting that that was the vision from previous generation, knowing that someday we'll have to build out.
I was just thinking about that today as I was putting together this presentation. The first one I did, like you said, I think we had 2 or 3 posters, and it was maybe 7 years ago or so. And so we've come a long way, and the project is substantially along at this point. So an update on some of the work. This is a bird's eye view from the west. We'll talk about upcoming work and then the construction timeline. And I'll move fairly quickly. This is stuff that you can see from the street, and you'll also be able to see today. Exterior sheathing is going on. You can already see some of the architectural relief in the exterior, which is part of the design to break up the larger walls along the streetscape. This is from a few days ago. At this point, most of the structure is actually in place for the main entry that you're seeing here. You can see the steel, but the wood is almost there. One feature which you can see here of the lobby is multiple ways in terms of accessibility. So we have stairs, we have the elevator, and then we have a ramp. And so we have redundant ways to go from that main level entry up to the main first floor. View of the parking garage. And then into some of the detail, you'll see today plumbing rough-in is well underway. These are some public restrooms. mechanical rough in, the ductwork, insulation is already going on the ductwork. Some views of the framing in the courtrooms. And then the third floor shell space. Roof is well underway. I think there'll be some progress today since this photo was taken. And then upcoming work. So we'll begin work on the Harriman Street frontage improvements. The backup generator will be going in. You'll see continued progress on the exterior. Mechanical, plumbing, and electrical, that'll continue. And then interior ceilings and finishes.
The backup generator, what percentage of the building will it?
So percentage wise, I'm not sure in terms of the load, how to address it in that way, but the goal was to be able to carry out court functions. So when we looked at the levels of backup generator, there was one level is just to protect people's work on computers, back up the data, and make it so that staff can come and go with power on. This is a level beyond that. I think we have it set so that at least one courtroom can operate. There's lighting in the lobby, and then ventilation. So that's kind of the level that we chose versus a full backup of the entire building. So
Will it run on diesel or what will be the fuel source?
yes, it's a diesel fuel source. So looking at the schedule coming up, you can see where if you kind of go down the schedule a little ways to building interior, we're well into the building interior work. That's what will be going on now through April. Here in a few weeks, we'll be starting the site work and public improvements, and then wrapping up the existing building renovations March through July with a total project completion in August of 2026. I mentioned this, I think, in one of the earlier updates, but we expect that the new courthouse expansion and main lobby will be open sometime before August 26th. That's for the entire project completion, but we're still working through the move-in timelines for court administration and for staff. And so we'll know more about what that open date will look like at some point in the next few months. And finally, any questions?
You had showed us kind of a close-up photo at one point about rubber isolation and the metal studs and sound control too. So I know that that's a design feature at this facility.
Yeah, sound mitigation was a really big concern because of the recording in the courtrooms and wanting to make sure that mechanical sounds from airflow and then also just sounds from adjacent rooms, the hallway lobbies, that we were blocking that sound as much as possible. So there's a much higher level of sound attenuation in this project than what we have in the existing courthouse.
So will you remind me, how many parking spots are downstairs? Is it 13?
13, yes.
Okay, that's what I was trying to count. So who's gonna get the extra ones then?
We leave that up to the court to decide.
I know,
Presiding judge decision.
I know. How many spots will you get, one or two?
As I said, I'm not the presiding judge.
Okay. Oh,
We have, two judges who have chosen pickup trucks. And historically, we go by seniority, but we're gonna, try to avoid collisions with the support beams.
That's right. Thank you.
Try.
Judge Presley.
That's right.
Well, there'll be a controlled sally port for transports also, so that'll be a nice upgrade to that operation.
So, I just wanna, again, extend thanks to Board of County Commissioners and, by extension, to the community and the state for supporting this project. It's been a pleasure working with Lee and his team, and we had senior leadership from the sheriff's office every step of the way. It was absolutely critical in terms of, we work with them all the time, but I don't really know what they do, and I don't know, what they see. And so, that commitment was, has been built in to what we have, and I think the commission made some really, wise design decisions that will future-proof this. On that second floor, we have one jury deliberation room instead of two. That allowed us to get an extra chambers in, so when the county does need to go back to the legislature, it's not necessary to ask for more space. You can take a picture of it, and that's gonna allow you to cut the line. I'll be long gone. But it really will make that process much easier, and you won't need a courtroom for every judge at that point. And I think those were really wise decisions in building on that third floor. I know there's always some risk and tension because that money could go somewhere else, but once you've got the site prep and a roof, there really is a value proposition. You're never gonna get that real estate back. And my final thought is that we're very proud to be anchor tenants, so to speak, of downtown. And we want justice to be visible, even if people never come in, and just know that, hey, that's where this is happening. And, there is some space to, sit outside. It's protective space. And again, DCSO had some thinking on that and on how to make it pleasant to be out there or protest out there, but also defensible space. And so again, just our incredible, thanks and gratitude for everyone who's made this come to fruition. Thank you.
If I could, I'm not well said, but the excitement too, I got here, originally got to Bend, and moved to Bend in '94. And it was lately, you drive to work as I do, I'm on the Parkway, of course, but been there for a long time, but wasn't there when I moved here. And to see the building, as you look to the left, when I come in, it's lately, it just really catches your eye. And I do agree, I think it's a great building. I think it's an awesome addition to downtown. But I echo what Judge Ashby said, really honored to be able to work in it.
And the team has really been sensitive to, during the RFP process, people will promise a lot, but the team really has been sensitive to live operations, court operations, and we're aware that there's construction next door, but it really has, it is a wonderful problem to have. They've been great about planning around that, sending us out sound notifications on when it will be loud, and we try to partner with that so it works for everyone and doesn't drive up costs for the county.
Okay, so working through our agenda, we've basically just going down the points here. So it'd be a roundtable discussion, and I'm not, as I say, I guess I didn't do my homework. I was going to lead each one of these. So let's step through mental health and public safety.
That would be, let's skip that because we might have Judge Emerson coming over. She's the real pro in that space. And let's see, what do we have? Status of public defense services in Deschutes County. So I'll tackle that. So we currently do not have, we are always on the verge of having an unrepresented list. And I think through continued collaboration with, Atlas Law Group, the Bend Attorney Group, Deschutes Defenders, the District Attorney's Office, right? For the past couple of years, we've really looked at this as like, what do we need to do to serve our community? Where can the DA flex a little bit? Where can the courts flex a little bit? And our community also received some additional attorney resource. We have had increased demand, and part of that, hopefully, when Judge Emerson gets here, talks about the change in aid and assist. The contracts came up there up this year for Atlas Law Group, I think Bend Attorney Group and Deschutes Defenders. Deschutes Defenders just got a 90-day extension in their contract, so they're not finalized yet. And there have been some pretty significant shifts in terms of OPDC looking at case counts in MAC and doing some auditing. And there's some dispute about, hey, we don't have capacity. Yes, you do. We stay out of that and really just try to make sure we have a fantastic person, Becky Williams, who looks statewide, seems to know everybody's number. Everybody owes her something for some reason, and she just finds a way to find attorneys for people who really need them. So she's just been an incredible asset. We have made it a priority to make sure that people have counsel, but it is very, very close. I check in with her every week because that shows up on the presiding judge calendar Tuesdays at 10:30. I said, okay, we have an unrep list. Now I was able to find 2 people. Great. So it's very close, but right now we're covered, and that's a great improvement from a year and a half ago.
one of the things we can do, is short sessions coming around next year for legislative, if there's a advocacy moment for us. And we've done this in the past, especially with funding for the courthouse. So let's look for those opportunities to do advocacy if there's a bill that comes up or just legislative we need to talk to. So let's keep that in mind.
Absolutely, thank you. Any other thoughts from our bench on public defense?
And Judge, nice to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, so there's an award, so that's why I'm
Oh,
a little
yeah.
tired. And Judge Emerson is on the bench, but she'll be here any minute.
Great.
Perfect. Let's see, in terms of, DVDSP, Judge Harriet was on the bench when I left and also has two daughters who, not surprisingly, are super active, and so she's just kind of in that phase. So one of the things that's great about Judge Harriet, and there are many things, but she has recently taken over the Domestic Violence Deferred Sentencing Program, which is a court that I ran for 14 years. It's a domestic violence program, and defendants need to plead their way in. So it fails well. If it fails, they go on to a regular probation calendar. And our most recent reports from DDS, from 2024 year to date, 2025, we have a 15% increase in individuals participating in DVDS and a 5% increase in success of people who complete that within 1 year. And that includes batterers intervention program, typically sobriety programs. We often find that drugs and alcohol, people may have a drug problem, an alcohol problem, but a violence problem against an intimate partner is a separate issue. But we try to, deal with all those because, the chance of somebody being successful in the throes of addiction are low. And that used to be a failure point in our program. And we changed that and just said, okay, we've given the supervising probation officer immediate control over putting on an ankle monitor, getting it on the court's next calendar, and really working with people, who slip. And I think that's been a real improvement in the program. And Judge Harriet has a background both in criminal defense and prosecution, so I think she has a real good, sense of justice for that program. And she took that over about a month ago. We kind of got the band back together. We got all the players, the district attorney's office, the dedicated PO, and just said, hey, let's take a look at our program, how we're doing, and we're going to try to gather some data and get a report up to the DV Council, maybe January, February of this coming year. So far so good, and it really reduces our domestic violence trial load. So because you can earn a dismissal with successful completion. So that's had a nice impact. That was the genesis of that way back in the day, was we had domestic violence cases back when Mike Sullivan was PJ. They were easily 2 years old, and no cases age well, but certainly domestic violence cases do not. In terms of broader discussion on time to disposition generally, the state goal for time to disposition standards, which is from when a case is filed and comes into our court system, are we getting out in a timely manner? The state goal is 98%. We're at 88.2%. That's up from 85%. So we have climbed there. We have had a drop in criminal time to disposition. That was 3%, DOMREL 5%. But when we look at some of the drivers for that, we see increases in filings for felonies and misdemeanors, and also domestic relations cases. So turning to trials, we had a 50% increase in felony jury trials 2025 over 2024, and a 110% increase in misdemeanor trials 2025 over 2024. So overall, we went from 22 to 35 jury trials. In terms of domestic relations bench trials, we went from 376 to 451, which is a 20% increase in trials, but still slipped on time disposition 5%. So time to disposition slips a little bit because we're just getting hit with a lot more cases. But the trend lines, frankly, are good. And I guess I'll wrap up my comments. We have worked with the same, I would say, calendaring system, and we work on, a rotation, a general docket. So just picture a wheel. So, this week you're in this calendar, and it may be, short matters criminal. You could move to a trial docket. And we've been in that, when I joined the bench 15 years ago, that was just getting started. And so one of the things we've decided to do is contract with the National Center for State Courts. It's a national consultancy, well-known, to come in and really look at how we do business. And when we looked at, a few things, one of those was, it's kind of like working on your house. It's like, didn't we just do the roof? And it's like, well, that was 15 years ago, right? You're just kind of on this cycle, and things change, right? When I joined the bench, everything was paper files, right? There was no remote proceedings. I mean, it was just, and so it's hey, are we still doing the best that we can to serve our community? One of the areas we know we can do better is family law, and so we've told NCSC we'd really like to focus specifically on cradle to grave family law and how we handle that. We think we can improve business processes, create efficiencies. Our TCA will talk a little bit about some of the things that we've implemented in just a minute. But it's also too looking at, hey, if the county is going to invest, just shy of $50 million in our court system, can't we also, honor that commitment to justice by having a consultancy come in and really just say, hey, we don't have a stake in an outcome here, but here's where we think you can really improve. And so they'll be reaching out to stakeholders, they'll be reaching out to attorneys, members of the bench, staff, and they'll come out and be on site. We should have a report on that possibly September, October of 2026. And then the bench can discuss that. Like I said, Judge Miller's gonna work through that, and I'm sure he'll do an outstanding job. But I think it's a wonderful opportunity to just say, hey, how can we serve the community moving forward and really use this building. So we see these what are generally good numbers, and we also know that we have 9 judges, kind of 10 pounds in a 5-pound bag. So we're going to be right sized in terms of our physical capacity. We've told NCSC, like, here's going to be our staff, here's our judicial resource, here's our physical plan. How can we maximize this thing, right? Like, how can we make this priority run? So we're pretty excited about it. And so do you want to cover some of the mediation, some of the things that we've done, and maybe the work that Joe's done on, self-rep?
So one of my first projects when I got here, I've only been here for about 3 months, was to look at our situation with mediators and to see how we could add and develop a full mediation panel. We currently have 1 part-time mediator, and that puts a lot of extra burden on the judges to address all of these Domerall cases and the issues that come up. So I worked with Salem. We put out a request, and I currently have 8 additional mediators that have expressed interest. So we're going through the applications now. Hopefully in another month or 2, we'll have a full panel. I did check numbers, and in the first 6 months of this year, we could have referred over 300 issues to mediators that instead had to be absorbed by the court and the judges. So if we have a full panel, we can use them to address these issues. And I think that will make a significant difference in the docket, and like what Judge Ashby was talking about, the amount of cases that they're having to address, and it should help things move through more quickly, more efficiently, with less judge time, so they can focus on some of the bigger issues and bigger cases.
Yeah, right. Even if they knock out an issue, like, hey, we've established custody through mediation, but we're still stuck on parenting time, right? So if we can either keep the case from getting into a courtroom, or just narrow the the range of issues, we're shrinking that. We want to right size every case. We want people to get the justice they deserve, but be in the right form, the right space to get that. If they need to be in a courtroom, 100%, right? And that's where they'll be. So this is exciting, and it's also great to have people, like in any mediation, engage in their future, right? What is this going to look like for me? What are my priorities? Having a real voice in that, because you're going to get a decision in court. It's like getting a decision in a major criminal trial. The case is going to get resolved. You may not really like the outcome, and I've described it, in the past as kind of like getting a haircut with an axe. Like, it's going to be shorter. You may not like the cut, So, there's a lot of benefits just beyond, efficiencies with mediation.
Can I touch on that? So just to, we've all got examples. I just happen to have a good example to support how good this expansion of mediation can be for us. And I know we, as judges, we've had so many of these. I just had a case yesterday, set for all day. It's a good example of this. And all I did was come in, they're both pro se, they didn't have attorneys, they're just here to be divorced. And I just asked them, and I do this, I think we all probably do this. What do you think your issues are today? Even though they tell us that in the filings, sometimes they change over time, and maybe they don't know how to say it. And you just check in with them. What are your issues today? What are your issues? Just get to the end of the story. Very quickly, I realized that this was set per day correctly because of the number of issues and what we needed to decide in here. But very quickly realized they're not disagreeable very much at all. And depending on the judge and how you do it, you might say, okay, thank you for that. We're going to take a short recess and I'll come back out and just know that when I come back out, you no longer get to decide and I'll be deciding. And lo and behold, they resolved the very few remaining issues they had, which was good. And so then I had, then you don't necessarily have enough work to put in for the rest of the day because of notice. You can't just call someone up and say, courtroom just opened up, we want you here now, because parties have to be ready. Of course, that's the law. This, I really believe that one is a great example of a case that absolutely would have given them a voice during mediation. It would never have been on my docket. I would have had a case, that needed to be heard. And so that's how it looks. Not, you get the numbers, but that's the idea. That's how this might look. And that's a good thing, but I just happen to have that. I thought I'd share. Anyway.
So will that be beneficial to the people in our community who cannot afford attorneys for their family law cases? Maybe we could address that.
Yeah, because a lot of these issues will come up with people who are pro se, they don't have an attorney. And it's, as we all know, it's difficult, it's intimidating. A lot of these people have never been in a court before, this is new. And this is a way that they can get some very accessible help and maybe not even have to go in front of a judge and get their case resolved in a way where they all leave feeling like they were heard, that they were understood, and that they can move forward without having to wait for the court process.
So what are the resources for that? Is that a state-funded resource you could have?
That's the state mediation funds that cover that, and those have changed some. They're starting to take a closer look on that, and everyone's tightening their belts. So the reason that at this point, this is something that we still think is a very good focus because it does help with overall court time and resources, and it is a huge benefit to the community. So I have been working with them very closely. They know that we will be adding, and that will be factored into their financial analysis that they are now doing annually to make sure that we are right-sized and that we are receiving the correct amount of funding. So we should begin each year with twice the amount we are expected to spend. So for example, if we spend $60,000 throughout the year on mediation, we should start the year with $120,000 in funding. So we should be able to comfortably address the needs of the community with the mediation funds and be sure that we can that the judges can refer all the cases that are appropriate to mediation.
Great efficiency stuff.
Yeah, these mediations are happening in a remote ecosystem. So again, it's a real access to justice issue. It's not taking up a footprint within the court. One of our supervisors, Peter Checketts, in terms of dealing, as Judge Sikora said, helping people who are self-represented, it came up, it sounds so basic, with a required checklist. Here's what the court needs to be able to effectively handle your case. And a few weeks before that case goes to trial, they're able to staff that. They're not making legal decisions, but they're just saying, hey, these required documents are not there. They're contacting the parties. And so it allows, once everybody gets into court, we're actually ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a small thing that's actually a really big deal.
And they'll be checking
Great
that
improvement.
3 times throughout the life of the case too. So as the case continues to move at various stages, we'll make sure that everything is there and available for what the judges need to see and what the parties need to do.
And those are the things that we really want NCSC to look at. You know, when I talk about cradle to grave, or we did, discuss that as a bench, is, there's so many, like, when should we have a judge contact? When should we have a staff contact? When should we actually set this for a hearing? Like, what's the best path, to get these things moving through our system, so that justice is achieved and we're still being efficient, but we're not compromising, justice, or that, quality of being heard and being able to put on your case. And I would like to point out that Judge Flynn is an expert just slipping into the room, but she's joined us.
Welcome.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Judge Flint, since you've now made yourself comfortable and are acclimated to the space, can you share with us a little bit of information on how things are going in juvenile dependency?
Sure, thank you. Good afternoon. Sorry I was late. We're just finishing up some matters at court. So I've had the privilege of working on the court's dependency docket. I took it over for Judge Forty when he retired in 2019. And Judge Miller is my kind and generous backup on that docket. So that's always been very helpful. One of the challenges that we've had with the child abuse and neglect cases is that we've been unable to bring them to disposition timely for a very long period of time. Our volume has continued to increase, and we're statutorily required to resolve fact-finding on those petitions within 60 days from when a child goes into substitute care or removed from their parents. And so we've been trying to figure out the best way to solve this problem, because the timeliness of those cases is essential to the family. Once their child is removed, it's a significant disruption of their constitutional rights, frankly, but also really the removal in and of itself is very traumatic for the child and for the parents. So we're required to get it done as quickly as possible so we can resolve it either through a finding of jurisdiction, interventions and services, or we find not proved and kiddo goes home immediately. So it's a really important benchmark in the case. And so our numbers in terms of our local data, we typically will compare this with OJD has their own internal dashboards, they call them, in terms of tracking statewide statistics on time to jurisdiction within 60 days, within 90 days, and then with 120, so that we're trying to get as close as we can to those benchmarks. So it's important for us to see where we are statewide, so how we compare to similar sized jurisdictions to see if we're meeting those benchmarks or not. So we have not been meeting those benchmarks for a very long period of time. So once COVID kind of decimated court dockets generally, we dropped down to something miserable, like 22% of our cases were being resolved timely. We tried to change that through various means, but nothing really reached a solution. So about 2023, presiding judge approached me and was like, hey, how do we fix this? And we had very serious conversations about the time on the docket that we had to resolve these cases. The jurisdictional trials were getting set on the regular dependency trial, on the regular general trial docket. And so you had dependency cases competing with, felony trials, misdemeanor trials, as well as all the civil trials and domestic relations trials. So with priority case types, this case type was definitely a priority, but when we're going against in custody felony trials, we get bumped, and that's just the way it is. And so what we had hoped to accomplish was some amount of dedicated fact-finding time for these types of cases, because it's also a population that unfortunately isn't oftentimes reachable or coming to court on a regular basis. And so if we don't have the opportunity to get everybody in the same place at the same time, we're not reaching resolution. So 2023, we started talking about what can we do to change the calendar to fix this problem. And we came up with a concept where the dependency docket would be entirely dedicated to one judge, one courtroom, doing short matters on Mondays and Fridays. and then running those trials 3 days a week. And we got a commitment from the DOJ, who prepares and carries the burden on most of those cases, that they would be willing to prepare more than one case for trial. So we could set them 2 or 3 deep. We could call them, make everybody show up, and see what kind of resolutions that we get. So our presiding judge then, in his wisdom, saw how this impacted other dockets, how it would look to have one judicial resource move from one place to another. And then we went full bore July of 2024 into a fully dedicated dependency docket. So we have our short matters. Typically Mondays and Fridays, we're now going into more of a 4-day trial week because of our volume is getting so hard. We're not having short matters on Fridays as much anymore. But we've been setting our trials, we've been getting them done, and we've gone from, I think what Zoe provided to me is our local data, and this is consistent with the dashboard at OJD, is that in 23, we were looking at 27%, so anywhere from 22 to 22% of cases resolving within 60 days. After we implemented changes, we saw another 20% increase in 24. And then now that the first portion from January to September of 25, we're at about approximately 67% dispositional standards being met. So in just 1 year and a couple of months period of time, we've gone about almost 175% increase in time to disposition, which is really significant. And then statewide, most counties are coming in at about 47% time to jurisdiction in 60 days. So we're doing much better than statewide statistics at this point in time. And then our time to juris in 90 days is even higher. I want to say we're on the order of high 70s to 80% time in 90. So it's been a very significant increase in resolution of this case type. And it's been a lot of work, both for the court in terms of scheduling. It's also been very generous of the other judges to allow for this carve out of a judicial resource dedicated specifically to this case type. But it was a policy decision of the court that this type of case needed to be elevated so that these families were able to have greater access to the courts. Because when we have greater access, then we can get them into services more quickly. So that's really that. It's an emergency docket. We're constantly running around with our pants on fire, but the goal of that is to act quickly and swiftly to either say, we're not supposed to be here, this family needs to remain intact, or yeah, we need to manage safety either through substitute care or in-home with intervention. So I love serving on this docket. It is very challenging to work with these families, but when it works and things go well, there's nothing better in the entire world. So that's my data presentation.
And the little known fact here of juvenile dependency, and I told Judge Flynn a long time ago, I said, you're never going to see it, on one of these, crime shows, right? Like, like juvenile dependency, like, oh, must watch TV. It is where we can affect generational change in outcomes. And the little known fact is that Judge Flynn is on call 24/7, 365 days a year for child pickup cases. And she had the audacity, I think, to go to the UK and see one of her kids graduate. And so Judge Miller and I were back up, and it happened to be
This can't happen again.
yes, a fairly robust pickup. And so the affidavits for these things typically run 13 to 20 pages long, single space. And we need to just kind of put her in bubble wrap, and she really is a gift to the community, because it's not just the grind of that incredibly intense work. It's that phone rings and so I back that up. She does 99% of these, but I see one of these requests for order come through at some time in the morning, and then she just says, I've got this.
I think it happened today. I think it happened yesterday. I saw exactly that. I got this. She always says it. Boop, 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 I got this.
Yeah, one of the real benefits there, though, is that in addition, I'm on call this week, so I'm a little sensitive to you know, the wake ups. But she's dealing with these cases right at the start, like, hey, should this child be picked up or not, or is there another way to do it? She just has a much higher level of sophistication, you know, than I do in terms of being the backup. And so when I get a call and she's gone, my first thing is like, what would Judge Flint do, right? And but I think it really serves the families, right, in terms of reunification or taking a different path. She's there, you know, at 2 a.m. and until, you know, final dispo on that case. So really good stuff, really good work, great numbers. Thank you so much, Bethany, for that work.
Yeah, thank you very much for the update.
I do have a question because our CASA coverage is down a little bit. It was 85% in Central Oregon. I believe it's down to 75%. Do you see any kind of a need that we can ask the community to step up to be a CASA volunteer? I mean, can you tell that they're a little bit, I think they said they had 500 kids now that they were dealing with, and I think that's so tragic.
Yeah, our case volume has really increased. We're like, I think, the last time I looked at dashboards, and so you can tell me if I'm getting it wrong, but I think of all of the counties, I think we're the 5th highest in volume, but we're like the 7th or 8th in population,
Right.
something that matter.
Yeah.
So we have those numbers aren't exact, but so we have a significant case volume. Our CASAs are spectacular. They just hosted a statewide joint CRB and CASA conference where we're able to come together and talk through, you know, how to do this stuff and do it better. And I will say that although CASA, I think they don't have as many people as they would like, the CASA staff is spectacular. CASA staff shows up and monitors all of our cases, even though they don't have a single dedicated volunteer that's able to take that child or that child pod. Consistently, I'll have 1, sometimes 2 CASA staff that are showing up. So they're always tracking our cases. They always know what's going on. They may not have a specific volunteer that's in that living room, but they're constantly recruiting and to determine how best to do that. Judge Hillman in the 22nd and myself, we alternate CASA interviews and oath. And so the next class is coming through. I believe there are 19 CASAs that are about to be sworn in. So we'll do interviews, I want to say the first week in November, and then we're going to proceed to oath administration shortly thereafter. And then depending on where they live and how they want to serve, they CASA Central Oregon, as you know, is both Crook and Deschutes. And so depending on where they're at and their ability to travel, they could take kiddos across those 2 jurisdictions. So we're about to get 19 more, which of course doesn't meet the entire need, but they
It's going the right way.
Yeah, they're doing a remarkable job, and the people that are showing up for these kids, I mean, these people are amazing. Like, they come from so many different varied backgrounds, and they have so much personal experience that the brilliance of CASA is like they bring in this common sense lens to these cases where like we get a little bit desensitized on our side of systems and administration. We're like, well, it's just, that's what the OAR says, that's what we're gonna do, you know? But then you have a CASA come in, they're like, this is bonkers. Like, what are you people doing? Like, this doesn't make any sense. Regular people don't do it like this. And we all kind of stop and we're like, okay, we have common sense in the room, people, let's get grounded again and figure out what's next. So they're of vital importance, and they are doing a tremendous job, even with the limitations that they have. They're at every single hearing, whether they have an individual volunteer or not.
That's really outstanding to hear, and I'll have to thank Heather for running the program so well. It's a calling.
Judge Miller, would you like to share some information on veterans intervention strategies?
Sure, and just as some of you probably know what it is, but these are, so I preside over the Veterans Intervention Strategies Court. Stated another way, it's such a good program that I don't actually have to do very much. It's meaningful to me. But these are veterans who have committed crimes. And I'll tell you why I say it that way. If you heard Judge Ashby talk about PVDSP, as I recall, the system is that these are folks that plead guilty and then potentially work through essentially a probationary term. And if they graduate, they may earn that dismissal, if I'm not mistaken. The distinction here is that these are veterans who committed the crime, plead guilty and are sentenced, which is why I can say they committed the crime and have been sentenced into the program. Their commitment in these crimes vary. There's certainly crimes we don't allow the program, obviously very violent crimes, other sex offenses and whatnot, but able to take veterans into the program that have established a nexus between the behavior of the amounted to the crime and their service. So it's not just veterans, it's veterans where there's a nexus between the behavior and the act. And so that's a requirement. And so these individuals talk to their lawyers. We're doing a better job, I think, these days of making people aware of the program. Lawyer judges tell them in other courtrooms that it becomes apparent that they're veterans. And by the way, that's not a small thing. Veterans, for those of us that know this, they don't often like to talk about their service. And in fact, the last time they ever want to talk about it is when they've been charged with a crime. And so it's important that we do our best to make them aware of the opportunity if they have to be one, get them talking. And the attorneys, defense attorneys are doing a great job of that. We have a great group of defense attorneys, many of our veterans themselves. We have a prosecutor's office that frankly came up with this idea. Matt Nelson of the prosecutor's office, I can't give him enough credit. His father served, he really wanted to do this for all the right reasons, put in the extra work and effort. I've said that before, I'll continue to say that. And they all work together. And then I just preside over the cases, but they plead guilty. They're sentenced into the program. These are different tiers. They do different things. They meet with other groups of veterans. They have to have jobs. They have to, they have to have maybe enrolled in college or doing something like that. They can't just sit and do nothing, is the point. And I could go on and on about it. I'll give you some numbers here in just a minute. But if you were to come to court, what would you see? You'd see veterans in court with me. They're checking in with me. I give them an opportunity to let me know how I can help them. Is there something the program can do to help them be successful? Or is there anything they want to just share with us? If you could just imagine in other cases, the last thing, I suppose it's someone who's been convicted of a crime and maybe, first of all, they don't normally come to court, they're just on probation. But if they did, they wouldn't really want to talk about anything. These veterans do. I'm honored by the fact that they feel secure enough to talk about what's going on in their lives. But visually, the room's got other veterans in the room waiting to have their case called. They have mentors that are typically Vietnam or Korean, mostly Vietnam vets now that are acting mentors, volunteering to be mentors. So they have a mentor assigned to them that they can talk with. And these mentors get up there with them and talk and report, share what they're allowed to share, they agree to share. They go to coffee with them, they get pancakes, you hear about all the different things, right? There's a generational difference oftentimes, but the military brings them together and they all speak that language. So it's been very successful, it's fun to watch. So they come in and they chat with us. The thing that's most visually different, and I say visually meaning I'm sitting up on the bench watching this. After a case is called, they don't leave. The veterans in the room stay there until their case is called, and the ones that have had their case called, they stay there. I never asked them to do any of this. But that is not unlike what you'd see in the military. I know the sheriff knows this, perhaps others, but they just do it. And they wait until all of them are done. And it's amazing to watch. They're very supportive of one another. But the courtroom itself is a small piece of what they do. They do their meetings, talk to their mentors. For many of them, for the first time in their life or since service. Again, most veterans don't talk about their issues until maybe something like this prompts them to. I would say most of them are not connected with the VA. And this program, I could give you too many examples to talk about, but it inspires them, or it occasions their chance to go talk to the VA. Next thing you know, they're rated, they're getting VA services that they should get and have earned the right to have, and their lives change. And so they're doing that, and I see them when they come in. I'm a component of this, just a cog in the wheel, but they come in and check in. And then the sentence and the probation are oftentimes, depending on the crime or crimes in the situation, there's obviously a carrot at the end of this in some fashion. I would say that if you talk to Matt Nelson or perhaps the attorneys and certainly myself, yes, it makes sense to have a carrot at the end of this. Why would they do it? But, and even the veterans, I think that succeed. We hope that it's life changing. We hope that they're finding people that they can talk to, other veterans. My experience has been it has changed their lives. It's an honor to be part of it. But here are some numbers. And it doesn't take up really not that much court time. We call it Veterans Intervention Strategies. It's a court connected program. The DA puts this on, other people volunteer. That's different than a veterans treatment court, which requires a lot of resources and a lot of commitment and a lot of time. The results, I think, speak for themselves. I think it's a creative way to address a concern when we don't have a lot of the resources. I've been very happy with it, and I think it's a good program. But not a lot of participants, you might think, but it's 33 participants have been enrolled since 2020, so it's not hundreds and hundreds, but it's 33. 9 are currently enrolled, meaning they graduate. We've had some graduate, become mentors, which is fun to see. We have 2 waiting to be enrolled, so 9, I think the 2 will be enrolled and will end up being 11 here shortly. We've graduated 22 of the 33, and 3 of those, or 3 of the 33 have been revoked. That's due to non-compliance with the program. That's going to happen, but I mean, 3 out of 33 presently is pretty good.
10%.
I think it's pretty good. Recidivism rates, this is an interesting stat that 4% might go to prison. Gives you some sense of the type of crime that, or crimes that they have committed that brought them to the program. 4.5% of them, that occurs after they graduate, and 21% recidivism rate while participating. So what does all that mean? What I'd ask you to consider is this, and this isn't uncommon. The judges in the room know this, of course. Maybe some of you do as well. If I told you you're going into treatment for drugs or alcohol, that's very different than me having a button I can press on my bench that just says you're fixed. You're no longer addicted. In other words, they're going to make mistakes. And so just like any judge would do in any case, it's true in Veterans Intervention Strategies Court as well. You see where they're at, you see the progress they're making, the slip ups. I had a case the other day where a person slipped up, they used, and they did all the right things. They immediately told their mentor, they told their probation officer, they had not slipped up before. So it may seem, perhaps to some, I would think it'd seem like the right thing to do was obviously not kick them out of the program. They handled it, and treatment is a process. And so when I say recidivism while in the program, they've actually admitted a probation violation. I violated, that counts as recidivism, but that doesn't mean they're out of the program. So you may have some of these rates that exist, but they ultimately graduate successfully. What do we do about that? Different ways to handle that. We may extend the program. We may say you're going to go another 2 months, and that means 2 months, by the way, not just 2 months of time. That means more meetings, get back on track. We want to see this in those 2 months. We want to see you with this, you know. So a lot of accountability. And I can talk more about it, but I would just say, if you're wondering, well, who are these veterans? What are they doing? I'm going to tell you right now, as you know, first of all, every one of them served. I knew I'd be passionate about it, but I hadn't done it yet. I am very passionate about this. It means a lot to everybody involved in the program. The veterans are combat veterans, most of them. Other veterans have suffered trauma while serving in the military that perhaps led to using drugs or alcohol. These are verifiable issues. And to see them form relationships with other veterans, many of them had none. It's an amazing thing to see. So very little, it's just not heavy on the resources. It doesn't take much time to do. I'm in court I have a meeting at 1 o'clock on the day that they come to court, lasts till 1:20, 1:30 maybe. had some reading to do for the team. We all do that, prepare for the cases and know the individuals. We have notes on them, what they're doing. And then you come out on the bench and call their cases up. I told you what I generally do. Thankfully, it's rarely to revoke or to talk to them about an issue. It's more of a check-in so that they understand the court is a part of this process. And then they do all this work. But to see them graduate, had one come in and bring his wife and his child and a newborn baby. I told you I'd keep talking about it, but I'll finish with this. This is an individual who his family was in Coos Bay. And we said, are you sure you want to do this? Because you got to be in Deschutes County. You can't be remote. You got these, they have to come to court. And this went on for, gosh, a year and a half. And he drove every time, absolutely without fail, made it up. And to see him graduating with his, that baby was, I've been 3 weeks. Were you
I was in that one,
Wasn't
yes.
that great?
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say his name, but I think he's gonna do well. And his spouse, very supportive, probably not unlike a lot of DVSP where if you're lucky enough to get, if the spouse stays supportive, it's life-changing. So not a lot of work for me. I'm not taking the credit. I'm lucky enough to be involved. A lot of the work is not with me. It's outside the court, but a very worthwhile result for people who deserve the attention for having served in the military. And I mean a lot of service for a lot of them. And to be able to do that without actually taking up a whole lot of time from our end is awesome. So
credit to Matt Nelson.
That's right.
And Judge Miller, and Judge Miller was kind enough to allow me to sit in on a session of Veterans Court, and it really is powerful. If you ever have an opportunity to go over, just let them know that you're going to be there and just kind of watching this process and seeing these gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, form this community that they didn't have before, connect with services that they richly deserve. Again, it's one of those things where there's some real durable, change taking place. And Judge Miller, I'm just going to call you out. You said this, docket assignment is a particular interest, and you have your passion about it. What drives that?
Well, like the sheriff, I served in the Marine Corps, and I did serve overseas and understand how it's impacted my life. And it's an interesting thing looking for ways to give back, and they're not always apparent. And so when I ran for public office, you didn't know I was going to say this, but when I ran for judge, I became familiar with the Band of Brothers, and I made some unbelievably good friends, people that are my dad's age, that I'm telling you, they call me to this day. And how you doing? What are you doing? How come we haven't seen you over here? You better get over here. I can't go to the Marine Corps ball without every one of them. And my wife is, she does the things I'm not able to do, and they're constantly asking about it. And it was, I completely understood the resource issue, and I never wanted to tell a bunch of military people that I could promise them to do X, Y, and Z when I know we just weren't in a position to do it. And to see Matt Nelson step up and do what he did, and then invite me to be a part of it. But to see these servicemen and women go through this and make major improvements, and really, again, to get around other veterans, that's a big deal to them. They had none of it, and they needed it, and they're getting it. Anyway, I'm just honored to do it. I think service matters, and this is a real passionate way, and it's really close to me. So I know that you know at least one of them, and I won't say her name, but it's also important to remember, just like a lot of cases, there's this is crossover. So we've got one individual who's doing great. I hope she's doing great over there, good, and has children. So the next thing you know, you got a veteran in VIS, but then she's on a Tuesday goes over to see Judge Flint regarding her children, and then you hear, and I do check in on some of that, and to see that joint work in progress. It can be totally life-changing for the kids, for the
From
individual.
BIS, I mean, it's just
Isn't that great?
remarkable how she
Yeah.
came in and was experiencing the world one way, and then she got support of BIS, and just that honor of
That's right.
that history, I mean, it's been a spectacular change for that person.
Judge Flynn, would you mind moving to the chair by the sheriff so you can be seeing, people are watching online? And so-
If you wanna
Get a
come
little
over here.
closer, sorry, hi.
You can come sit between.
There, hi.
Commissioner just called you out.
No, I'm just trying to make
There you go.
like happy. Yes.
Yeah, a couple other things really quickly I wanted to, we started probably 2 years ago, going really up tempo with major crimes, settlement conferences, and they've been quite successful. The genesis of that was really to help with public defense, crises and lower case counts for providers. What it's really turned into is a much more humane way of handling life-altering decisions and choices of both defendants and victims. And also finding out earlier in the process what cases really need to go to criminal trial. And one of the reasons I bring it up, just to make you aware that it's happening, Judge Bagley and Judge Harriet also participate in the mediation role. But to really thank the Sheriff's Office, it's an incredible commitment of resources. Many of these individuals are in custody based upon the nature of their charges, typically Measure 11, homicide, sexual assault. And so we could not do this without DCSO support. And so that was before our current sheriff, and it continues with Sheriff Rupert, and we are just so grateful for that support. So thank you for providing that service for our community.
And I feel badly, I'm gonna add, Sheriff, also, we've got Deputy Marchington currently, we've always had, they also commit personnel to come over and be a part of BIS too, and that's not overlooked, I should have mentioned that, so, yeah.
And we've had historic, fantastic support
Yes.
in terms of coordinating cases and security with, the team that's over at, in our courthouse. And we have been blessed with, if you look at the security status of the different districts around the state, it's runs from an embarrassment of riches with, our relationship with DCSO to just terrifying in terms of, no security. And so thank you. It makes our litigants feel safe. It allows us to focus on what's in front of us. And then they go, above and beyond. I was able to conduct, and there was a gentleman who was really in crisis, could not come out of his cell, major crimes case. And we finally just thought, hey, maybe we're scary. Like the judge, the prosecutor, the DCSO invited us over, and we got that case resolved within the facility on an afternoon. And it was really unheard of, and fantastic outcome, for victim, for the defendant. But the easiest thing to say for all kinds of reasons would have been no. It would have been entirely justified. And they always find a way to get to yes. And to me, that's part of the Central Oregon way, is how can we come together to serve instead of let's start with no and see if that works and move on. So thank you so much.
Sure, thank you.
And whose idea was that to go to the jail to do the process?
We'd said it a few times, and it was the same thing, like, he won't come out of his cell in DCSO. They don't go in and just kind of, grab people by the scruff of the neck. It's,
I'm pretty sure it was Judge Ashby.
yeah,
You're not gonna say so, but
it was
he knows that.
it was like, hey, let's try this, right? It took the DA, it took the defense, and it was just like, why not? Right? It's like whatever it takes to, get this resolved. And because we were gonna have a trial, so what's that trial gonna look like? So, in mediation, you're only limited by your creativity. So we need partners in that and engagement in that. So that was excellent. And, we'll also talk really briefly about deflection. I know that, I'm not super confident here other than to say Neil Marchington is so engaged in that, and that has looked really successful. And Sheriff, can you speak to the most recent numbers? I want to say that there were 30 or 33 people who've gone through deflection, and I know that they're really trying to expand it to drug use misdemeanors, I saw that, when fire departments handing out Narcan kits, they're also including contact information for deflection. So they're really trying to, fit as many people under the tent and help as possible. And Deputy Marchington is just a perfect person for that.
I believe there were 26 graduates.
Yeah,
I think we had 26 graduates in that. I don't know total, but it was pretty certain we had 26 graduates.
yeah, we're-
Captain Schultz will have more on that.
Well, move in one more seat, because
You
it's
can't
right at the edge of
face.
the camera.
You're in.
oh,
You gotta,
I get to see.
Captain Schultz, you know.
Yeah, and, the sheriff has a lot of responsibilities, manages these programs go through. But you're right, Neil Marchington, when that grant came to us, we were trying to figure out how to do it because we were gonna have a behavioral health type of deflection program. But the candidates in the deflection folks, the peer monitors, they wanted to be part of law enforcement. We opened the doors to them to come in, and just recently we had 10 people graduate. About a couple, I know our commissioners were there, and we're just over 30 people that have graduated out of 33. So we're doing really well with those numbers. And one of the things is, we focused when we first started was the PCS2 unclassified, and that's where the DA wanted to go. We were modeling our program after Marion County. And we were able to work with the DA to start looking about other charges in there. Neil Marchington every day looks at our jail count, scours through it, sees all the charges, and if there's a connection to a drug crime like a theft charge or a criminal mischief, he's on it because he knows the reason why they're committing the crimes is that drug charge. So not only, the whole goal is to divert them before they even come into our system, before they see any of the judges, and then have the DA just kind of monitor. But even now, if they do come into our, we don't forget about them. And so we monitor them through and we work on those cases, which then alleviates, a judge in front of, we see progress, we get less time in custody. We get them out on pretrial, which frees up our jail count, because if we're overbooked in our jail, 362 beds, we're at a failure. It's difficult to manage all those inmates. And now we're operating about 200, 250, and that's with pretrial, but also with Neil's program and our pretrial release, looking for those folks that we can get in these programs so they can make the changes on their own without having to have a huge sentence to change them. But one of the things Neil has been working on is also, training all the police officers in our area. And he's now working with firefighters to get them, because you never know when they show up at a scene and their whole behavior, it's a drug charge of some sort causing criminal behavior. Can we latch on to them, get them help when they need it? And you're right, when we looked at that and the sheriff was in detectives or in search and rescue or doing this, the only person that came to mind was a Neil Marchington to do it, because he's so
Perfect fit.
Now
yeah,
it is.
yeah. And he loves it, and we're gonna have him for a while. So, that's the key. And our program's doing real well. There are programs in Oregon that are not doing so well. I think the key is that we keep working with Steve Gunnels and looking to expand charges. But at the same time, we gotta be careful, right? Because there are some people that have to be held accountable for what they've done. But we should never, especially with fentanyl and cocaine and all the drugs, heroin coming in our community, we just can't give up on them, because once they come into our custody, we sick Neil on them. And then he tries to figure out, can we help you? And then we get that engagement. And the main thing for us is having our doors open, bringing the outside in. So when you came to meet with us, I've never seen that in all the years I've worked, where we've done our hearing inside the jail. The judge came in, we had the DA, the prosecutor, everybody right there, and the public defender to deal with. That's what we need to do, and that's what we're doing with peer mentors. There's two things that we struggle with in the jail for our inmates that are struggling is housing. So we're worried about the PO cuts. because much of the cuts that they were gonna be seen is that housing, getting drug dealers into safe area, or drug people using drugs into safe areas. We're worried about that. We don't know what the outcome yet is, but Neil and I talked about that yesterday. But regardless, with the jail, you know, the key is to keep that door open, let the mentors come in, meet with whoever we can, and eventually, who knows, we'll build a new jail, a trauma-informed design
With skylights, I know.
with skylight. And we'll make it for the type of population that we're serving now. 90% of people coming into our custody, mentally ill, drug addicted, 90%. So, and the jails were never built that way 50 years ago. It was built for security. We need to be able to find ways to bring them in, because right now, I can't bring chaplains in. I can't bring mentors in to service all the folks, because the way the linear footage of our jail is. We can make those to be more open, and this program could take off. But I do think, and hopefully the legislators don't cut this program, because this is really the key to get them to start changing their behavior. Once we stabilize them, get them off drugs, they're able to come with clear minds and see what's out in front of them, whether it's family, other veterans, people that care about them, good housing instead of just creating havoc in our community. So those are our numbers.
So with that grant we received, that we acknowledge we received today, is that give, what kind of scope, what kind of runway does that give you at this point?
Well, that's, you know, we're asking for all the money that's awarded to us, and that gives us the ability to go for this year to contract, because we, out of that grant, we only paid for Neil and a part-time, our pretrial, Jessica Maldonado. But the rest of the money goes to our stakeholders. That's Best Care and Ideal Option. And there is a little bit of money left over. So if we see somebody truly in need that needs inpatient care, because most of the people we're trying to deal with are the PCS2s. They don't require, but many of them do. We're able to send them into inpatient care, and then even work on their housing for at least a first month. Like, it's $500 to go to Turning Points or Shepherd, some of these in treatment places that help them, and then they go in for a month, they find a job, they get a job, and they come back, and they're, they live there as they get clean and sober and try to find ways to fight this addiction. But that grant gets us started. We're gonna be okay for right now.
And Judge Emerson, who is our local expert for sure on mental health court, but also a state leader in mental health issues and legislation. Thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, thanks. I had 3 mental health hearings before we had to come over. Well, first I want to say, we're really lucky in Deschutes County because everyone that works in behavioral health works really cooperatively and collaboratively. So we have quarterly meetings with everyone that's involved in behavioral health, with the jail, Deschutes County Behavioral Health, with the hospital. And so everyone's working together to improve not only our forms as it relates to civil commitment, but also to work collaboratively to deal with our aid and assist population, which is exponentially increasing. So when I took over the docket in 2020, we had 24 defendants. In 2025, we currently have over 57 defendants. Throughout last year, we ended up with 99 defendants on the aid and assist caseload. In 2020, we had 437 hearings. At the end of 2024, we had 1,061 hearings, and we're on track to increase that by over almost 6% this year so far. There's been pretty significant changes in the law with the passage of House Bill 2005. They're hoping that it reduces the number of people on aid and assist, but on the other side of it, it's going to open up the criteria for civil commitment. So the criteria for civil commitment is supposed to be reduced, but we run into the problems that we just don't have placement for anyone. So right now, all of the Oregon State Hospital placements are prioritizing aid and assist, which means below that is people who've been deemed GEI, and below that is civil commitment. And so what we're seeing is state hospitals housing almost exclusively aid and assist population, and people leaving Oregon State Hospital are the primary people admitted to SRTF housing because they're being prioritized aid and assist, GEI, civil commitment, even moving out of that into other residential treatment facilities and SRTF level of care. So when we open the floodgates as it relates to civil commitment, the big question is gonna be is where do they go? Because right now, we've had a couple clients that have been civilly committed. They didn't have any placement. They were really dangerous in the civil commitment at the hospital. The jail willfully and graciously opened their doors to allow some of them to be housed at the jail while their pending charges were pending. They ended up being found unable to aid and assist, and that was the only door that took them to the state hospital. And so I'm so thankful to you, Sheriff, that you and Captain Schultz, that you're so willing to be a resource, because a lot of our aid and assist population has higher acuity of symptoms than they've had before, which also means that they've been extremely dangerous. So I appreciate that you're willing to help with those people, because the reality is I don't think St. Charles is one of the few locked facilities. They only have 5 beds in their locked facility. Their rules don't allow them to segregate, so even the 5 people within their unit are traversing amongst each other, which leads to additional problems with safety and new charges, often assaults, whether it's on hospital staff or other patients. And so the aid and assist population has been a really important population that we've been dealing with, and the increase in the numbers. So the aid and assist has their own specialized docket, but I still do this general rotation too. So all of these aid and assist hearings, the 1,061 hearings, are being placed in and amongst all of the other issues that we're dealing with on our regular docket as well. So there is a push to create a aid and assist specialty court, but at this moment it hasn't happened. But we've been really lucky that we have an assigned judge who is dealing with all the aid and assist population and issues as they come up. And it's been really important because the changes in the law over the last 3 years have been a lot. So we are still under the federal rules for the Mossman orders as it relates to populations that can go to the state hospital and the criteria. So even with the change in the 2005 House bill, the Mossman order still controls as it relates to that. So those provisions that the legislature just passed are still subjugated to that order, and we're not in compliance with the amount of time. So the population is remaining at the jail well beyond the 7 days. And our jail also is willing to administer medication within the jail, which is not happening statewide. So I feel like Deschutes County often gets shout outs from other agencies and entities saying they're the county to look at for how to do it right, or to do it as good as you can in the situation that we're in. So thank you. Thank you to Behavioral Health. Thank you to the county we also got a new SRTF in Redmond. I just broke ground.
Well, yeah, so Holly Harris is here and she's the new health director, and this is her domain. As I say, a lot of the words you're using, I hear her use too. So I don't know how much relationship with here, but yeah, Holly's very up to speed on all this stuff, so.
I don't know that I could say it any better than Judge
Yeah,
Emerson just said it
great,
all.
great.
She just hit the nail on the head with all of it. This is very much tied to, you know, the conversations we're having around the county financial assistance agreements with the state. A lot of this discussion of the Mossman order, the contempt with OHA, all of this is really sort of now feeding how the behavioral health system is being dictated by the state to be operated. So prioritizing aid and assist, prioritizing civil commitment, GEI, and some crisis services over kind of everything else, and the whole thing's underfunded. So so it's a challenge, but I thank you for your kudos, because I think we are doing it right in Deschutes County with, you know, under resources we are, you know, volume going up, small teams dealing with all of this, but because of the collaboration that we continually talk about here in Central Oregon, and in Deschutes County, I mean, we're able to sort of problem solve this together. So, and make some headway on it. So appreciate that.
Well, you had no turnover on your team, which I think is incredible, because they're some of the lowest paid people in the system, and your teams have stayed. They're so dedicated to doing the civil commitment and the aid and assist. I am so thankful for them.
Well, thank you. They're very passionate about this work. One thing to highlight, though, that I was mentioning to your transport administrator, is that with the SRTFs coming on board, hopefully by summer of next year, be operational at 16 beds. I know we want more, but that's what we've got. I'm gonna say it before you do. But in total, between the child psychiatric facility and some adult foster homes that we're working on as well, we should be adding around 41 beds in the next 2 years. That will have an impact on this. It's still not enough, they will all be full. But we will fill that, and I'm pretty excited about that.
Can I ask how it works when someone is restored to their community from the state hospital? How involved are circuit court judges in that? I mean, is that all decisions that are being made at the state hospital?
No,
Okay.
so the court is involved every step of the way because placement is determined by the court. So if placement changes, so we'll send someone to the state hospital. If the state hospital determines that they no longer need a hospital level of care, they send notice to the court. We're required to order a new community consultation to find a lower level of care, which is their team. They go out, they have to do those reports within 5 days of the court order, which they've been on the nose with doing that, which is shocking to me considering the number that they're required to do. And then they make recommendations to the court. We'll either have contested hearings on placement if there's placement available, or it'll be stipulated, but it has to be a court order that changes their placement from state hospital to an RTF or to something else. And even if, so we've had another case where someone was placed in a SRTF and that wasn't the correct level, they needed a higher level of care, comes back to the court. So if they stipulate, the court can just enter an order, but if there's one party that doesn't agree, we have contested hearings on it, everyone.
How often have those recommendations back to the community, how often have you had to contest them and sort of wrangle it out?
I had 3 of them today.
Yeah.
Those, okay.
Well, and I think that it's becoming, we're getting more objections to it now because with the higher number of people, there's not appropriate placement, there's not appropriate level of placement. And so the problem becomes if there's not an appropriate level of placement, then what are we doing with them? Are we dismissing their charges because of it? Are we putting them in a higher level of care than what's recommended or something else?
So is it disagreement with how they've been classified, or is it just saying, yeah, but we don't have a place for them?
Typically, it's not disagreement on how they're classified, it's disagreement on, we all agree this is the appropriate level of placement, but it doesn't
But
exist.
we don't have it, so.
Yeah, just don't have it. And we see this in civil too. I mean, we go through this, the bar for civil is pretty high. It's been lowered. We'll see how that all plays out. But, we get to the point where you civilly commit somebody, they're in St. Charles Hospital for, but they can't stay there forever. That's not what civil commitment's intended to do. And then there comes a point in time when we have to make a decision to step them down, but there's nothing to step them down to. I think in the past, 5-6 years, we've saw certainly that when our homelessness crisis was at its peak, we saw, people under civil commitment being discharged to homelessness. I mean, that's why, it just really defeats the purpose of why we're going through this entire process to get somebody to that level of care. So we're seeing less of that because we do have a few more resources available to us, but that's a challenge in that space as well.
And I would note our number of civil commitments that have gone to a hearing, they're up 20% just from this last year. And the expectation is that those are going to go up exponentially because the criteria was pretty broadly open based on this new House bill, which comes into effect in January.
Which for the past 6 years, our civil commitment cases have increased double-digit percentage year over year for the past 6 years, as opposed to the rest of the state, which is basically flat. So we're seeing a significant increase here.
And I think this is really tied to the resource issue. When you don't have the proper levels of care for people to get the treatment that they need, they get worse. And they cycle through over and over again, and so until they get to the point where we're having to civilly commit, having to go through that really high bar process. I mean, that's not where we want to start with people. We want to start way earlier on, but when you can't get people the treatment that they need, that's what happens. So I think that's highly attributed to our increase in civil commitment numbers. They just haven't been able to get access to the level of care they need.
And so I think Judge Emerson has demonstrated why she's in charge of the mental health board. One of the worst assignments I have is backing up Judge Emerson when she decides to go to lovely places with her family. And again, it becomes, well, what would Judge Emerson do? Because she will forget more than I will ever know about these things. And it just always reminds me of what an incredible resource Holly Harris is for our community, always has been in every role she's served in. So thank you so much for that. And thank you for rising to the growth in that caseload. And we've expanded And Judge Emerson was dealing again with 10 pounds in a 5-pound bag. We've expanded her ability to handle some of those cases, but that's probably something, if these trend lines continue, that just like with Judge Flint, it is critical in those cases that they are given the time necessary. Right? That is not where we're gonna, make cuts.
That's not lost on, I think, the rest of us on the bench. We know if I can give Judge Flint what she needs to be successful doing that, it's a difficult job. She talked about that. You heard it, probably echoed it. And I would say exactly the same with Judge Emerson. I'm just gonna, it made me smile when you may have heard she said the court and we. I think she means her. That's what I was hearing. She won't do that, but it's just like Judge Flint and others. I mean, she took this on, developed it, is developing it. And I like what you said, statewide leader, not just, the shoots is where it's at.
Yeah, and none of this is possible without, we have Judge Sikora here, we have Judge Bagley who's not present.
That's what I was.
Everyone else is supporting, it's just a real productive ecosystem, so.
Yeah, the cases don't stop coming. And,
Yeah,
when that's just how it goes.
right, and so, a lot of information, and it was kind of like the fire hose kind of breakdown of, what's happening in our community from, the court side, but, we're excited about it, and again, we're really excited about, the new resource coming online, which will be the expansion. Any questions at all? I know that's a lot.
I have one more question about the way the Mossman order is working. It's kind of working its way through the system. So there's a lot of moving parts. This is extremely complex.
Yes.
So we have the Mossman order is driving action at OHA. We are seeing it show up in legislation, kind of trying to adjust to this new requirement. I don't think that the legislature is just trying to solve, trying to solve problems for the state hospital. They're also thinking about, kind of what we need throughout the system, to be able to, for people to be back restored to their communities, for example. But kind of proportionally in terms of the fixes they're coming up with, is it, are they doing enough for the communities, basically at the local level? Or is a lot of what they're doing really about kind of new tools, new resources for the state hospital?
In terms of aid and assist, I would love to see more focus on the communities. We have been advocating from the CMHP perspective that, that there's more and more requirements coming on communities to do things, but the funding is not following at pace. And there's, even in our contracts, just the requirements and how fast we do things, how quickly we do things, taking these people that are ready to place, moving them out. They create new processes for how we manage that really put the burden on the CMHP versus really trying, in my opinion, solving the problem at the state hospital. Like what are we doing to kind of do we need to increase capacity? Do we need to, is there something else within the state hospital system that needs to be fixed? The focus typically has been to try to have it be more land on the community to solve the problem, but without the resources to do so. Without SRTFs, without places for people to go, there's only so much our little teams of 3, 4 people, peer support specialists, case managers can do running around trying to support what are sometimes dangerous individuals out in the community that we are expected to sort of wrap around and support, and that's not always possible in some circumstances. So I would love to see the resources follow the requirements that are coming on. I think we all agree we would rather see people in our own communities getting the treatment that they need. I don't want to see people housed at the state hospital. They're going to come back to our communities anyway, and they're going to be more successful here, and we're going to do a better job at managing and helping them anyway, but we need the funding and resources to do it.
And then, so that's kind of parallel to what we're seeing through the CFAA.
Yeah.
But then the other problem is like Deer Ridge, I've been there several times, and 60% of the people in Deer Ridge are mentally ill. And the superintendent came from Vail and has been working in this for 25 years. And she said, oh my gosh, the percentage of mental illness just keeps getting higher and higher. So that's something that I don't think we can ignore.
No.
Because then what happens when they actually, I mean, there's that group, that's a teeny group that gets to go through the welding program and can leave with a family wage job, but what about all the others when they are done serving their time and they've got that mental health issue?
Yeah, I think supported housing, places for people to go when they transition out of those levels of care, to be able to have that continuum of care for people to get the help that they need. Not just gonna go from prison with a severe mental illness, having not probably gotten the level of treatment that you need, because that's not what prisons are designed for, to transition straight back into a community setting, it's likely not gonna be very successful. I mean, yeah.
Well, I think there's a lot in there that, because when we're talking about the aid and assist is happening pre-adjudication. So we're finding people unable to aid and assist because constitutionally you can't proceed to adjudicate them until they're at a level where they can work with their attorney, understand the proceedings, and move their way through the court system. So we have people who have mental health problems that are coming into the system because they're committing crimes, oftentimes tied to the symptomatology related to their mental health. So the issues about the mental health once they're in the adjudicated process, I think is kind of separate and distinct from the issues that we're talking about as it relates to Mossman, because the Mossman order talks about the aid and assist population that's being held in jail pending adjudication, so they haven't been found guilty of anything. And how are we getting them to the point where they are stabilized enough to move through the adjudicated system? So it becomes really problematic. So these people come into the jail, we are determine that they're unable to aid and assist, and then we're trying to figure out in what setting do they need to be in to get them to the point where they can come back, and then we can adjudicate them to then deal with the adjudication on the other side. The problem, so it depends on who you talk to answer your question. So like the state hospital would say, they're holding us accountable for all of this, but if we took every single ready to place notice and was able to take them out of the state hospital and place them into the appropriate placement for them, we wouldn't have the issues that are happening at the state hospital. Whether or not that's completely true or not, I don't know. But what I would say is so we get a list on a week-to-week basis that shows which counties have ready to place notices and where they land on the continuum of their HELOC, the level of care that they need within the community. And that could range from a 1 to a 6. And the highest level would be they need to be at the state hospital because of the acuity of their symptoms or the risk to the community. The next step down would be an SRTF, which regulates whether or not they can freely go in and out of the community. And then a secure residential treatment facility, which basically allows them to come and go as they please, down to community restoration. What we're finding is when these people are coming into the jail and they're being assessed, if they land somewhere between community restoration and the state hospital, there's nothing available within the community. So they're saying, we think they need a secure residential treatment facility, an SRTF, or something else, but it's not available. That's always the answer is, we think they need this level of care, but it's not available to them. So then the only option becomes placing them on community restoration, which often is back in homelessness or at the VI or at the Rainbow Motel, or we have to make findings based upon their charges. So if they have misdemeanors, there's these findings. If they have felonies, there's these findings for them to even go to the state hospital. So if they have low-level charges, it's not a person, a misdemeanor. If it's anything else that is a misdemeanor, they are not eligible to go to the state hospital at all. If it's an A person misdemeanor or higher, then we decide whether or not they're eligible to go to the state hospital. So what's happening now is we have people with pretty serious charges. They're not eligible to go to the state hospital. And now we're asking community restoration. So we're gonna put them at the BI or back into homelessness. And here's all the things that we want you to do to restore them to competency. And sometimes it's not a very realistic ask if you have someone, so we might have someone who has 47 B or C misdemeanor charges that never changes whether or not they're able to go to the state hospital. So law enforcement could be dealing with them every day, multiple times a day, you know, on and on and on and on, but they don't pick up high enough level of charges. And the only option is to put them back on community restoration, and maybe they're having delusions, or maybe they're not functioning in reality. And we're saying, okay, you're gonna go stay at the BI, which they're not able to do based upon their mental health. And you're now in charge of giving them legal skills training and giving them their medications in the community. And, you know, so all of these requirements that the community mental health people are required to do, but they can't even find them.
Right, or that is half the time that the team spent is looking for people, trying to find them, like trying to engage them, trying to, that's a big piece of the work that's being done.
Yeah, so we have a guy right now who has Measure 11 charges, but the recommendation was for a non-secure residential treatment facility. He's doing great. They were able to find him the proper level of care, and most people were saying he has Measure 11 charges, he shouldn't be outside a locked facility. Ultimately, they found him a secure residential treatment facility, or non-secure, and he's agreeable to do it under his court order, and he's doing great. But the only other option would have been to send him to the state hospital, if they couldn't find that place.
Yeah, I think the focus on charges versus symptoms and acuity has been a challenge. The criteria of when you can send somebody to state hospital is based on, charges, whereas we know there's many people that have low-level misdemeanor charges that are some of our most acute individuals that really are the most symptomatic, that need sometimes the higher levels of care. It's not, their charges are one thing, but their symptoms are something quite different. So that's been a challenge.
Great
We could talk about this
discussion.
all day.
But I mean, this is the relationship, communicating openly and, public meeting here, getting elected officials and their department heads. Sheriff, thank you for joining us today. So yeah, we're just celebrating that we're having these discussions here. So we've kind of gone through our agenda here. Thank you very much for that update. We skipped it for you, so we can, let you get in there.
Just for you.
And then at this time, is there anything else? I mean, just any other urge to share your wisdom or thoughts at this moment? Just want to make sure. So at this time, optional tour of courthouse expansion. So we're available to go check out the construction zone. I saw the crane out there, I think it was yesterday, bringing in some of those beams. So as we're working your way back to the courthouse, let's go on a little tour.
Did you ever?
And we can just meet at the Harriman Street entrance, at the employee entrance to the courthouse.
Great, okay. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.